Hello, everyone. My name is Ethan Weaver, and today I'm going to be giving my Research Methods 1 biology capstone proposal. And my project is going to be over tree diversity in Rogers County, more formally, observing tree diversity in Rogers County. And my advisor is going to be Dr. Craig Zimmerman. And so basically, just right off the bat, this is going to be a survey, a field survey, pretty much selecting trees. And of course, I'll get more into this. So the question of this research, the question of the survey. So a point is the calculating the abundance of certain trees in a given area in Rogers County. And so as of right now, I've decided that this given area is going to be the Rogers State University um, research property, and I'll get more into that here in a bit. But that'll be the area that I'm going to be choosing to be a good and useful and realistic area for representation of this. Um, so yeah, the abundance of certain trees. So how many of this tree, how many of that tree, and of course, I'm going to get here in a bit. I'm going to get more into how I'm going to calculate tree or how I'm defining tree. Because I'm going to be there are some trees I'm going to be counting, and some that are some forms of smaller vegetation that I'm not going to be counting. Um, they have to be a certain size, but I'll get more on that in here in a bit. So another point is how many different species of trees are in the given area. So how many I'm seeing of eastern red cedar, blah blah blah, um, in the research property, and then of course the percentage of these species that I see in the area, and overall just calculating your basics for diversity in this environment, this habitat. So some background again, like I said, I plan on doing this in the RSU research property, 260 acres, and I've been out there a few times for a few of my classes. Some background about this project is just knowing in northeastern Oklahoma some of the most common trees that we have. So we have eastern red cedar, Juniperus virginiana. You have oak, you have cottonwoods. For oak, that could be most commonly potentially to see is post oak, otherwise known as white oak, or blackjack oak, or also known as red oak. Quercus stellata, Quercus marylandica. Um, and Again, I think it's important to bring this up. I have a pretty strong interest in dendrology. I've found a greater appreciation for it taking field botany this semester with Dr. Martin and learning more about these trees. Um, and they're also easy to find. He likes to say that you don't have to hunt for them like animals. They're always going to be there. The trees aren't going to run from you. So that's another thing that I like about it. So yeah, these are some of the most common that we're going to see. But there's a tool I'm going to bring up here in a bit about how I'm going to how I'm going to calculate some things that I might expect to see without having to go out into the field when I actually do my calculations and my observations. Um, and yeah, but I could see hickories and elms. It's not just these three. There's a good grouping of consistent habitat trees that you're going to see here in northeastern Oklahoma. Okay, so a significance. I think it's always important to keep track of diversity. It's something that we see with vegetation, animals, all things within ecology, forestry, things like this. So by tracking diversity, we can see trends in competition between these species, and also these trends and these observations can actually lead to maybe identifying some trends with endangerment of certain species. Although this isn't a huge thing in northeastern Oklahoma or Oklahoma as a whole. There are some, but I don't think there are very many endangered or anything listed for federally endangered or threatened. Things like that in Oklahoma. It's mainly animals like fish or bats, but this is still important to keep track of. I just have a greater appreciation for our field botany and things like this. And another trend, invasive and exotic species, which it definitely is, happening and has been, for forever. So a couple examples of this are tree of heaven and the Callery pear. So the Callery pear is really bad. I'm pretty sure it might be one of the most maybe invasive exotic um, form of vegetation in Oklahoma right now. Um, when it's in fertile condition, it's a really bad smell. It's just really bad. They're bad at taking over. They're colonizers. Tree of Heaven, Alanthus altissima, and This one I know for sure is in the property. I've seen it many times myself. I'm not exactly sure about caliper. I know there's a pretty good population of them in verdigris that I've seen, but they're pretty much everywhere, so it really wouldn't surprise me. And again, I'm going to talk about how I'm going to possibly, predict what I might see here in a bit. So some methods. Like I said, it's going to survey. Most commonly known, just like a lot of people's project, is going to be a systematic survey, very methodical. I'm going to start at one part and go to the next for this. Take a step by step. So I'm going to be using GIS or some sort of mapping software, or possibly Google Earth Pro, to form plots within the research property. So I'm not going to just like look at the property as a whole. I'm going to split it up to organize it and makes to create a table, which I'll explain more here in a bit, based off of all these different plots. And the method I'm going to be actually using, like I said earlier, to determine which trees I'm going to be counting, I'm going to be using point sampling methodology to figure out which ones I'm going to record. And I'll explain. This will be later. I'll talk about how this works. And the participants, it really doesn't have to be a lot of people. It could really just be I could do this by myself. Maybe at most one other person to help me with my materials, or help me call out and record or identify certain trees. Um, so materials, a map and a compass. Um, you know, this is pretty old school, but it's important. It's good to know how to use, and also good to take. You could use your phone and things like that, but I probably will end up doing this, and this will make more sense with how my methodology will work. A field logger and notebook. This is just to keep track of certain species that I'm counting out in a certain area. The point sampling gauge, which down there's a picture of it. These have different shapes, and they look a bit different from place to place. But this is a representation of one, and pretty much this is used to help calculate tree density and like tree basal area. And then I'll be using this tool, holding it up from a certain area, and sort of how it works is if you point it up and the tree sort of appears to move to the side, or just depends on which specifically type of gauge you're using. Then that means that okay, that's big enough. I want to count that. Um, and then if it doesn't, or I'll end up determining that I'm probably not going to include it in my survey. But it shouldn't be too difficult to do this, even because most of these species are pretty consistent. It's hard. It's pretty easy to identify. Like, yeah, that's okay. I'm going to count that. That's red cedar. That's elm. But it's important to keep in there to keep things consistent, so it's not just I'm choosing trees, off of just arbitrary basis. Um, so some waders, I haven't really seen too many, but I know they're out there. Creeks, might have to cross in certain plots in the research property. Flag markers within the plots, and so this is pretty much how it's going to work. I'm going to go to a certain area that I'm going to plan beforehand, certain points within these plots, and that's where I'm going to make do my point gauging, point sampling, and make sure I identify all the trees that I'm going to be counting, as well as I'm doing that right after I'm going to identify that species and then log it. Um, Mapping software, like I said, GIS would be good, or something else like that, and then possibly a naturalist, which is probably going to be definitely what is going to help. I could do this beforehand to get a pretty good idea of what species are out there, which I've sort of already done, and they match up to some of those few most common trees that we have in northeastern Oklahoma. But this could also, just yeah, I'm not going to be starting my project yet, so things could update. I could get more data that would be more useful, and things like that. It could also help keep track of those maybe invasive trends that we're going to see out there. So analysis for this. So like I said, the survey, we're just calculating in the trees the amount of this species and this their total abundance separated by each species. Um, and this could either be shown in like a pie graph or a bar graph, just at the very basics for that. But also, me and Dr. Zimmerman talked about how it could be cool to use also GIS, not only for identifying my plots and making my plots, but also to use it to represent my data in a way to show certain areas within the plots will have designated colors for species and show their richness and percentages. And this is still to be determined because there's so many cool little things you could do with it. And you could represent it in many different ways. So I could have a map that just shows maybe oak or something, and it shows or it could be post oak or blackjack, whatever. One that just shows the species and just shows them how much are in this area, how much are in that area. I could show a map that has all the species as best as in abundance as best as I could put it. So yeah, I could put it all together. I could individualize it. There are a lot of neat little things you could do with that. And so there's an example of a pie graph, and then down there that isn't exactly what that's going to look like, but that picture is an example of GIS software for plotting out areas. So future plans as of right now, I plan on at earliest starting this project when vegetation comes back after winter, sometime in early spring, maybe March, April. In the meantime, I could be looking at iNaturalist to get some expectations and some more data. But I'm not going to be able to go out in the field and actually do that logging and point sampling until spring. And so it's a good chance it will go into the summer. But I could really realistically, I might be able to get this done even before then, but we'll see what happens. Yeah, it should be interesting. I've been out on the property a few times, and I'm excited to go out and actually get actually a survey for this area. So these are some sources, and if I were in person, this is where I'd ask about questions. But I guess you can email me if you have any questions about this. But yeah, I'm really excited about this project. Um, I really won't need too many participants, but it should be fun to go out there and test some dendrology knowledge and pick up on some trends and just get a good representation of what percentages of species are out there. And yeah, thank you.